seeing the last few people logging in, and we're going to go with Salim kicking things off in around about 30 seconds. Just seeing the last few people just getting in there. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's T-Level Familiarisation webinar for construction on-site and building services engineering. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Salim Bisram, the lead industry manager for building services engineering, and I'm joined by various colleagues within City and Guilds, as well as colleagues from ESFA who are supporting with today's delivery. We are presenting this webinar from home, so please excuse any unwanted background noise. The presentation is likely to take around 50 minutes with time for Q&A afterwards. All attendees will be in listen-only mode for the presentation, so please engage with the webinar and use the question and chat tabs from the on-screen panel. We will be including useful information and links in the chat during the session. Following on from the webinar, we will follow up with a CPD certificate and video recording of today's webinar. Wanted to just add something here in terms of some of the feedback and questions we've been receiving on the webinar we hosted on Wednesday this week, but also a number of webinars we have been hosting over the past few weeks and months, mainly around progression. We have received a number of questions and queries around progression from learners that will have completed a T-level and wish to join an apprenticeship program within their respective subsector. These discussions are currently being undergone with the Institute as well as ESFA, as well as ourselves, and we will likely to have some of those outcomes in the early part of the year. And because this presentation is not too long, and there's a lot of information that we need to present, if you do have any questions around progression, we will take those back. But on today's webinar, we will primarily be focusing on the slides within the deck. Thank you for that. So let's have a look at the agenda. So we'll be introducing some of the team. We'll also be then looking at the brief history of the T-level, looking at accessing some of the delivery material, and then we'll be handing over to colleagues within ESFA to talk about the industry placements and how they can support you. We will then follow up looking at some of the questions and answers. So in terms of our team that's going to be looking after on-site and building services, we have Jason Howe, Technical Advisor for Construction. We have Michael Scarrett, Product Specialist, EAL. Rob Mallender, Technical Advisor, Building Services Engineering. Naz Lewis Humphrey, Industry Manager for Construction. Alison Whittle, Technical Advisor, Post 16. And myself, Salim Bisram, Lead Industry Manager, Building Services Engineering. I will now hand over to Alison. Over to you, Alison.
Thanks, Salim. So what are the expectations of a T-level? Well, in the Post-16 skills plan, the government laid out their plans for a simplified system of education. So after GCSEs, or when a student reaches level 3, they will have 3 major options. And these will be T-levels, apprenticeships, or academic study, for example, A-levels. And T-levels will provide several different progression routes. These are skilled employment, a truncated apprenticeship where possible, or higher levels of technical study. The technical qualification, referred to as the TQ, is within a T-level at level 3. And of course, T-levels attract UCAS points at level 3 and will be allocated tariff points in line with a person who has studied 3 A-levels. So moving on. Now, I'm sure you've all seen this slide before, as it provides an overarching view of the T-level programme. However, there are a few subtle changes with the naming of some components. Now, a T-level is a level 3 programme of study made up of several different components. The total size of the T-level programme is 1,800 guided learning hours, and it is designed to be studied full-time over 2 years. Now, within the T-level is a technical qualification, sometimes referred to as the TQ. Now, this is made up of a core component and an occupational specialism or specialisms. Now, you can see on the slide, within the box outlined in black, there is a breakdown of the technical qualification. Now, this is the part of the T-level that City and Guilds and EAL are developing and are responsible for. The core component is between 20 and 50% of the TQ, and that focuses on the concepts, theories, transferable and core skills that are shared across the route. Now, examples of this could be health and safety, legislation and sustainability. And the core will also include behaviours. Examples of this could be teamwork, problem solving and identifying issues. Now, as the core is knowledge-based, it is assessed by an external exam, which is set by City and Guilds and EAL, and it's marked by us. And an employer-set project, which is developed by City and Guilds and EAL in conjunction with the employer industry boards for BSE or construction. It is graded A star to E, which is similar to an A-level grading, and again, it's marked by us. Now, if we move on to the occupational specialism, that's between 50 and 80% of the TQ. Go back to the slide, please. Thanks, Celine. And it's based on an apprenticeship occupational maps. It is practically assessed by a synoptic assignment, which means it assesses the breadth of the occupational specialism, and it is graded as pass, merit, or distinction. This is provided by City and Guilds and EAL, and it's marked internally by centres and moderated by us. Now, outside of the TQ are the components that we mentioned earlier. An industry placement must be completed, which must be no less than 45 days in total across the T-level programme. Maths and English must be achieved at level 2 as an exit requirement. Now, this could be either GCSEs, presently at grade 4 or above, or level 2 in functional skills. There'll also be some general digital competencies which will be integrated into the TQ where necessary to achieve competence. Now, in some T-levels, there may be a license to practice requirement. Now, that's something that the T-level panel decide and may be required by industry. And of course, as in all programmes of study, there will be opportunities for employability, enrichment and pastoral activities referred to as EEP. So moving on. Now, this slide really is to prompt some questions really and considerations for you all as providers. So please do put any questions that you have in the questions tab and we will do our best to answer those. Now, City and Guilds and EAL don't set any entry requirements. However, some providers have already started setting their own entry requirements. So for progression, if one of the progression routes was onto an apprenticeship, maybe one of the questions would be, what will that learner already have achieved? And how much of the TQ aligns to the occupational standard? And if learners are choosing a T-level with the intention of progression to higher levels of education, if so, what will they progress to? And what UCAS points will support that? So back to you, Rob.
Apologies, I think Rob may be having a few technical issues there. Rob, are you okay?
Yes, sorry, I was just introducing the poll question there, and GoToWebinar just started to freeze on me. Apologies for that. I got a spinning wheel there on GoToWebinar. Quite frightening, seeing as I'm the one operating everything at this end, but I think we're back on track now. Yeah, so just running the poll question there to see if you're receiving our e-bulletins, our T-level e-bulletin newsletters. Before we run on to tell you where the delivery material is, if we could all just complete that poll, which most people I can see have done now, we'll close that and I'll share the results with you there. So 71% of people are receiving the e-bulletins, which is good. 29% saying no. One thing we've found out, actually, and the reason we've run that poll is if you haven't ticked the e-bulletin, T-levels in your My Preferences on email alerts, you won't receive those e-bulletins. So we can perhaps ask colleagues if they will drop a link to email alert updates, which is at the bottom of our City and Guilds website on the right-hand side. We can drop that link in the chat and then just maybe refresh your preferences in that alert system to include T-levels. Then you should get all future e-bulletins. So for those who aren't receiving them, I would just advise to do that. Thanks for that, everybody. Right, let's carry on with the presentation. So how do we find the T-level delivery material? So these are located on the City and Guilds T-level page. We've just put a little snip there from that T-levels page, and as you can see, you've got your T-levels there, your drop-down box with employers, providers, events, etc. So on the actual T-level page, you've got various drop-down boxes. The one you need for the actual draft handbooks is the draft TQ specifications tab. That's the draft technical qualification specifications. If you've got a separate device, you can always have a look at that now if you wish, and make sure you can find it, and then we can guide you in the questions tab. Put something in there if you can't. Just a heads up though on this material, once it's approved, will move on to the relevant qualification page. So this will move on to the 8710 page very soon. So we're currently in the throes of getting everything finalized, and once basically the qualification has gained approval, everything's finalized. We're at milestone 3 at the moment. There might be some few minor tweaks they come back on that feedback with, but that should be up there and approved very soon. So that will then be the final version of the qualification handbook, etc., which will be on that web page. What will also start then populating on that web page is like sample assessment material and things like that you can look at. We will obviously be sending an alert out when that goes live. So please sign up for those email alerts. Make sure you refresh your preferences for T-levels, and then we can notify you when everything's live. And joining these webinars, obviously, we're going through things like that as well. So that's where the information is. The qualification handbooks are a very useful tool in this, and there is some great information in there. I would suggest before any further webinars, access these draft handbooks, have a look at how things are structured, and there's an example of that on screen now. So as you can see, we've still got the things we know and love from previous qualifications. When things are drafted in the handbook, you've got the criteria there. So the example there, the role of different disciplines involved in design. That then gets elaborated on, and we give some range for that scope of delivery. So that criteria then gets broken down in the range. So we give the tutor an idea of what to teach and the length of breadth of delivery. And then if there's any key areas the learners need to know, and the scope of that range is then included in this what do learners need to learn section. So that then is more of a new addition to how things are structured with regards to some of the previous qualifications, which will hopefully be more useful for tutors and delivery staff to know the breadth of the qualification and the range of delivery that they've got to teach for each topic. So that's something to have a look at. I will just say as well, there's some excellent stuff around how things are assessed, guided learning hours, which we're going to go into some of later, but all the stuff which Jason will be following on with later on, this is all just cut stuff from the qualification handbook. Please download those and have a look through those now. I can't see them changing dramatically when things are finalised. So after today, we're going to be running a future webinar. Now, part of this future webinar, we're looking to then go through the actual core, the content of the core, and then how the draft occupational specialisms have been produced, the content of those, before we actually start running some occupational specialism specific meetings on a Teams platform and a bit more, user friendly. We can talk to each other. We're going to get some sector specific stuff set up very soon. But before we do that, we're going to run this generic webinar on the 9th of December. So there we've got the link to register. You'll get that with the follow-up on the recording, etc. And we'll also drop that in the chat as well now. So if anybody's not registered on that webinar for the 9th of December, you can literally do it after the webinar, towards the end of the webinar, when we've got the questions, come in and things like that, and we'll have a bit more time. You'll then get a confirmation email. That's the way we're going to be sort of registering things in the future. So with regards to registering your interest and your contact details, some may have already been on the pre-approval webinar, which was on the 23rd of this month, a few days ago. So we was encouraging centres on that webinar to complete the pre-approval form. Again, there's a link there on the slide. This is mandatory for all centres delivering T-levels, and what it will do, it will get the ball rolling with regards to your approval. You'll get allocated the quality assurance person involved with your centre. You'll be able to ask them advice and guidance, etc. And it'll just help us as well appreciate which specialisms people are teaching and which qualifications they're looking to get approved for. Let's get the ball rolling with that now. So if you haven't already, complete the pre-approval form. Also, any delivery staff which are delivering T-levels at the moment, please complete the T-level provider contact update form. So what we're going to be using that information for is to then personally invite you to some of these future occupational specialisms meetings, which can be a bit more focused around the specialist curriculum area. We can hopefully then share some good practice, get centres talking together who are actually delivering this new qualification, maybe share some resource on there. That's the sort of thing we're going to be trying to encourage up towards the September delivery date to try and support centres throughout the new process. Okay, I'm now going to go on over to Jason, who's going to look at a little bit more detail around the structure and assessment of technical qualifications.
Thanks very much, Rob. Just as we move on as well, I have dropped into the chat bar the links for the TQ specs for both BSE and construction on site. So you can use those links to go straight to the qualification handbooks, and hopefully what you see now will become more familiar with you as you move on. So as we saw on the screen there with that slide, it's just a quick overview of what the GLH is and how that's split up between the core and the occupational specialisms. And again, obviously, if we've had colleagues on our validation process for this, we'd just like to give thanks as well, because ultimately, that process was really, really important for us, because originally construction on site, the occupational specialisms were 500 GLH, and after endless amounts of feedback we got from providers and employers, we upped that GLH to 600 to make it more in line with the skills development and the knowledge that's required. So that'll give you a quick overview. It gives you the component numbers as well, or unit numbers as we're probably more familiar, how the components are split, the GLH and the TQT. So hopefully that'll be more familiar with colleagues on the webinar when they follow the links to the handbooks. Next one, please, mate. With regards to construction, how we're looking at it being assessed, you have the core component, and that's going to have 2 exam papers, as we mentioned. They're externally set and externally marked, but around 2 hours long, 90 marks, and have a weighting of 35% each. And then we have the employer set project, which has been developed with employers, which will be completed over a period of time, 17 hours in total, and that has a weighting of 30%. All of these components will be given a grade A star to E combined. So there's a bit of differentiation when it comes to the grading of the core component and the occupational specialisms, as we'll see now. Then you have your occupational specialisms. So these are the synoptics, if you like, and there's one set for each occupational specialism. The differ in duration, but very, very similar. There's only sort of 3 hours difference between sort of carpentry, joinery, P&D, and then bricklaying at 24. Obviously, they're fully weighted at 100%, and knowledge will be assessed accordingly during these as well. They will also be externally moderated, and how these will be graded is pass, merit, and distinction. And in future webinars, we'll touch more on how the gradings are combined overall to give you an overall grade for the T-level qualification. Next one, please, Rob. BSE, slightly bigger given the number of occupational specialisms in there and the additional content that's within the course. So you will see a big difference in the GLH for some of the occupational specialisms in there. The core up at 520, TQT at 650, and then you have your standalone occupational specialisms, electrotechnical engineering, electronic equipment, and gas engineering alike. And again, you know, they all have the GLH to TQT aligned. Then you've got your combinations, which are again very unique to BSE, how they've combined these. And you've got the total GLH and TQT assigned to those combinations accordingly. Next one, please, Rob. The core for BSE is assessed in exactly the same way, has the same weighting, same grades. Marks are slightly different and duration slightly different for the exam papers. So the marks on the exam papers for BSE are at 110 and the duration is 2.5 hours. The employer set project follows the same guidelines of 17 hours and 30% weighting. But again, they're all graded the same A star to E. With regards to the occupational specialisms, these are the standalones. There's quite a difference in hours on these depending on what the specialism is, but the marks and the weighting is the same at 90 and 100% accordingly. These are going to be externally moderated just like construction, and again, they'll be graded pass, merit and distinction. Next one, please, Robert. Thank you very much. These are the group components, if you like, or the group occupational specialisms, so plumbing and heating, vent and heat, air conditioning and refrig. And these have separate assessments but come together to create an overall grade on a pass, merit and distinction. Again, the hours are recorded in there. So when the timeline of when exemplar timelines will come out for the curriculum, when assessments will take place, you can start and planning these hours into your curriculums accordingly. And hopefully they'll be very helpful for you. And now I'm going to hand over to colleagues from ESFA. Amelia, are you coming in, please?
Hello, it's Chris here, actually. Chris Flynn. I work in the T-level industry placements team in the Department for Education, stroke ESFA, I suppose. And as you can see from the first slide, this does detail, or rather outline, if not detail, what industry placements are all about. And it is just worth rehearsing the key points, I think. So time spent by a 16 to 19-year-old learning and working in an organisation. And it's very important that it's a real environment with an employer making a meaningful contribution to that organisation. They will have been, the student will have been developing skills in the classroom, and this is an opportunity to put those skills into practice in a real life working environment. So this is very different, the 45-day placement, from traditional 1 to 2 week work experience. It is a significant ramp up from that, and it's key, it's right at the heart of what the new T-level is trying to achieve. So it needs to be a minimum of 315 hours, that's already been touched on, average 350 hours. Occupationally specific, and as I say, developing those students' practical and technical skills, but also developing the behaviour and so on that is needed and expected in a work environment. In terms of placements and how they can be organised, they can be in a single block, they might be day release, or they might be a mix of the two. So this can respond to the needs of the employer, the student and the provider in determining what are the best placements, what is the best mix in order to achieve those goals, and can be agreed between them. Next slide, please. This is really just taking a step back, in part to re-emphasize some of the points that I'm making, because there are often questions about, you know, an industry placement, and this is in a way a guide to thinking, well, does it do these things? Does it give a student, because what a good high quality placement should do is give a student a chance to put into practice those level 3 technical skills, should give them credibility with prospective employers, improve their confidence, competence and employability, but it also gives the the employer an opportunity to develop and shape the young people's skills to help build their future workforce. From the provider point of view, you need to ensure that the course equips students with the skills employers are looking for and are ready for the working world, and have high quality learning goals agreed between all of the key parties, in the same way that you will be agreeing the best how the nature of the day release should be. So that conversations are really quite key. But come back to this if you're thinking, okay, so what exactly is an industry placement? Well, there are the practical things, but they're also thinking about these things as well. And these are very important and should be at the heart of it all. Next slide, please. So we were looking at T-level industry placements, making sure they're high quality, but recognizing that one size doesn't fit all and doesn't fit all industries. That's why over the last year or so, we've introduced some changes which allow students now to work with up to 2 employers. Where a young person has special educational needs and disabilities, they can complete part of the placement on site. That's up to 105 hours. But it really must be in the best interest of the student, and it must be aligned to the goals that are set, learning goals that you've actually set for those students. And for obvious reasons, placements for those in young offender institutes can be full-time. In addition to the 2 employers, so over and above that, you can have a small proportion of occupationally relevant work tasters, and these can be for 5 days, up to a total of 5 days. So you could have, technically you could have 10 half days, or you could have 1 3-day and 1 2-day, or 1 5-day taster even. But they're really to give the employer and the student a chance to see whether it's a good match between them, to see whether the student can get there on time and so on. And it's there as a way of just testing out those things, but it does need to be occupationally relevant. And this should go a long way to sort of helping make sure that there's a really good match with between the student and the employer. So in addition to the 2 employers, and up to 5 days with as many employers as you want within that 5 days. We've allowed part-time work to count as long as it's occupationally relevant. We appreciate that many students that are working, it's probably going to be retail or hospitality, so it may not always be relevant, and it may not be relevant to you in this case, but it is there to help where it is relevant. The reasons that placements are recorded in hours rather than days is to reflect, yes, different working practices, but it's also to reflect the needs of students as well. And for instance, some might have to drop children off, their siblings off at school. They might be looking after elderly parents and so on. So it's designed to ensure that they get the requisite number of hours and obviously agreed between the provider and the employer. We've also introduced some route-specific models to reflect different industry placements. So for digital engineering in manufacturing, allowing placements at route level, as opposed to only those relevant to their particular occupational specialism. And for construction engineering and manufacturing, allowing one leading employer to facilitate the full 1,315 hours minimum placement across their subcontractors or supply chain, to ensure students have experience of the whole range of tasks required on projects. We can go to the next slide, please. And I think I'm handing over to Amelia at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Chris. I'm Amelia, and I also work with Chris at the ESFA, but leading on T-level policy development. As we're talking about the technical qualification today, but also giving some kind of detail around industry placements, we wanted to kind of articulate what a curriculum could look like with the TQ and how the industry placement can be fitted around the needs of the employer, which Chris has kind of mentioned, but you can also work that curriculum planning to get the kind of best outcomes for students. So this is just an example curriculum. I think that the Association of Colleges have done a few webinars kind of running through this, but we thought that it might just be worth mentioning here. So here in this example, the way that the curriculum has been planned is that the core element of the TQ, so the core knowledge and the employer set project, are run over the period of the first year and into the first assessment series of the second year. And then with the industry placement element of that, you can have kind of elements where you're building employability skills, and then you may want to be looking at sending your students on some of those occupationally relevant work taster sessions that Chris was mentioning. So getting them really to have a bit of time with their new employer to test it out and see if they're in the kind of right occupation and they're happy with their area. And then in parallel to this, you'll probably want to be thinking about developing the learning for the occupational specialism over the course of the 2 years, with the summative assessment in the second series of the second year. And then it's about really, when is your student going to be able to contribute to their industry placement and learn the most? And it seems like towards the middle to end of learning their occupational specialism, the technical skills that they are learning in the specialism can be reaffirmed during their industry placement over this period, and kind of vice versa. So opportunity there for your students to be developing skills in the industry placement that will help them with their learning and exam preparation for the occupational specialism, and also developing skills in the specialism, which can be cemented further in their industry placement. I'll head back over to Chris now.
And so, in order to provide support to, thanks Amelia, I should say, and in order to provide support to help you deliver industry placements, there's probably a key document that I really do sort of want you to go to, and it is the Industry Placements Delivery Guidance. And you can see the link there at the bottom, and I think it comes up later. And this will give you a lot of that very granular information that I think many of you would be really interested in seeing. For instance, industry placement agreements, completion declaration forms. There are templates in this guidance that will help you. It tells you where they all get sent. What you do with them, how they're completed, templates, objectives. There's a significant amount of guidance there that isn't just generic guidance, but it really does talk you through and guide you through and give you examples of templates that can be used throughout the industry placement process. So I'm belaboring it because I really do think it's a genuinely helpful document with genuinely granular information that will help you. And as you can see there, what does it actually set out? Key roles and responsibilities, good practice in matching learners to employers, how to prepare students for their placement, best practice, progress indicators to help inform providers and employers' judgments about students' progress on their placements, what completing a placement looks like and the evidence needed to demonstrate completion. And as I've said before, there are templates as well for all of these sorts of things that you can use. It also sets out the special consideration criteria if a student cannot meet the placement hours due to exceptional circumstances, and what needs to happen if a student does not complete their placement. So I really do want to emphasize, please do use this guidance document. You will find it very useful. And if we go on to the next slide. Yes, so we've just launched another round of capacity and delivery funding for providers. And then from mid-December, we're launching a support package, and we're looking to finalise the contract at the moment. And this is to provide direct support initially for 2020 providers, but then extend into 21 and 22 in the coming years. It's vital that we make sure that the first T levels work properly, and as you will appreciate, there are particular challenges with industry placements at the moment. And we'll be working with providers to make sure that everything works its way through holding webinars and workshops, networking to share good practice, and we're developing sort of a range of guidance materials. We're also back a bit, sorry. We're also keeping employers, as we would put it, warm through this very difficult period through the proactive engagement of the National Apprenticeship Service. They're sort of looking at how they can best continue to keep employers interested during this difficult time, and are looking at timing and how they then really sort of get back fully engaged. So they are doing a lot of work to keep employers warm and interested, and hopefully offering placements, even though some may not be doing so for a few months yet. There's a campaign about to be launched in early December, which will run into February, targeting employers. There's ongoing support through the Strategic Development Network for employers. We've already had around 1,400 employers registered to attend events, access tools, and request direct intensive support. So again, we're keeping employers warm. They're definitely interested. It's difficult at the moment, but they are employers are interested. And we're doing our own bit, widening the pool of employers, because we're going to be looking to increase the number of placements available across the civil service, public sector, and indeed via the government suppliers, by looking to see whether we can include things in contracts or other looser arrangements, if not contractual ones, where that's not possible, with our own suppliers to offer to be able to offer industry placements. And indeed, we've done our own bit directly in my team when we, admittedly before COVID-19, when we had a student and had them on a placement, and learnt a lot ourselves. That was a T-level style placement. So we did learn a lot from that. And then we've got the ESFA field force out there as well. Next slide, please. So I've touched on this already. We are aware of the impact it's having, and we are looking, monitoring the situation, keeping employers warm, but we're not proposing any further changes to the policy, because we had a knee-jerk response in a very, very fluid situation. It would be wrong if we were talking about this a month ago. It would have been when there was no end in sight. The vaccines now do mean there's, well, I don't know, I've seen so many metaphors about the cavalry coming over the hill, but it does point a way forward for a different situation in the spring, summer and beyond, and we will just be keeping abreast of that. Still working closely with providers to understand the delivery challenges, and we'll continue to review the impact throughout this term to see whether we need to do anything further or provide any additional support. And these are the resources. I've already mentioned perhaps a key one, the industry placement delivery guidance, but you've got the policy statement, you've got a whole host of guidance resources on the AOC website there. And there's a whole host of resources for employers, which you can see at the end, which we've developed through the employer support package. Do make use of them. There's not just general things out there, general guidance. There's a lot of really quite detailed and granular guidance, particularly in the delivery guidance. So I would like to point you to those resources. I think this is David, is it?
It is, yes. Thank you, Chris. Yeah,
oh,
sorry.
I do beg your pardon.
Fine, don't worry. I was just trying to find the mute button, which I seem to have found.
Well, that's going to be the phrase of 2020, David, I think.
Thank you very much, Chris. So hi, everybody. My name's David Thomas. I am a user researcher with the ESFA. And in addition to all the amazing resources that Chris has been telling you about, I'm going to tell you about one more. So this is the support with delivering T-levels website, which I'm going to kind of take you through a little bit today as well. I don't know how many of you are aware of it or have been exposed to it, but it recently went live, and we're starting to sort of build out that offering at the moment. And one of the two big kind of key takeaways from my little slot as part of this presentation is to get people to have a look and provide some feedback on anything that they find useful, or indeed if they have a look and think it hasn't been particularly useful, but also to sort of ask and see if anyone is interested in helping us propel this this new support package, this new support website into its future. So you can see there's a launching pad and a very swanky looking rocket on the pad there, getting ready for what may be the future of that website. So the things that you'll see during the session today are the two sort of live features that are on this website. We have a help center, which is sort of the one-liner that we use for that is a front door for all T-level support materials. So the idea here is for all of the documentation, things that Chris has mentioned, certainly documentation that city and guilds have as well, to be hosted on this one place, or if not hosted, signposted to the correct place where you can find that information. And also a forum, which is a brand new feature that actually was released last week, which I will show you a little bit about today. The forum is really meant to be a space where T-level providers can seek advice from one another. So you can network on a sort of more national scale, ask questions related to industry placements or curriculum or whatever it might be. So that is open and that's now available. All you need to do to sort of participate in that is to register at the website, which I'll show as well. So I'm going to try now. It didn't work particularly well the last time I did this, but I'm going to try and present my screen because I have my own little deck and I have the service on my screen as well. So I'm going to...
I should have just made you presented, David, I think. If you want to give that a go, please. Somebody could acknowledge.
I will give it a go. Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Okay. And, oh, I have been made the presenter. Show my screen. This might be my whole screen.
That we can see that your whole screen in there, David, yes.
Okay, great. I'm just going to move the GoToWebinar thing and I'll just put the presentation up here. Right.
That's
okay,
good
okay.
stuff.
So,
perfect. T-levels, great stuff. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. So what I want to tell you a little bit about as well is why we do user research. I don't know if people will have seen these desire paths on their walk to the train station or on their walk to the office or whatever it might be. But they're often out in the wild, really, and I kind of use this, and a number of other researchers and designers use this to sort of talk about the importance of user research and how it relates to design. So desire paths are essentially what people, well, the most desirable path that they would take between point A and point B. And what a lot of time, what happens if you don't find out what users' needs are before you actually build new services is you end up building that pathway, this sort of concrete sidewalk or pathway without really understanding what users' expectations are of the thing. And what I thought was really interesting on this one on the right as well is you can see actually that people can't see the desire path that's created when the snow is not there, but that is the natural path, right? They don't see it and they're still creating that path through to, it looks like, I'm not quite sure what it looks like. There may be a college in the background or whatever it may be. In the built environment, actually, I think it's might be the Swedes. They actually do this when they build a new development. They don't actually put any pavements down. They wait and see what the first snow looks like and track the paths. And then they actually would build the pathways over that footfall. So that's why we do user research. We try and find out what those desired paths are before we actually build anything. This is the Support with Delivering T-Levels website. I've included the link actually at the end of the presentation as well. So as I say, it's open. You don't have to register to see any of the information or any of the content that's available on there. The only thing at the moment that requires registration is participating in the forum or indeed registering to receive updates from the ESFA. I'm assuming that you will probably receive a newsletter update on a twice monthly basis. The way to sort of get that nowadays is through the support website. So it's driven by user needs. So my job as a user researcher has been to talk to as many people as possible that may end up using the service. We did a discovery piece of work very early in the year before COVID kind of happened to understand what the big issues were at the moment. with finding in the information around T-levels. And so one of the three big user needs were that we need to have support materials that are easy to access and easy to find, and trying to have that one unified place where that information can be found. So that's that everything in one place, not just for T-level providers, but also for us. So for us, the Royal We, ESFA, DFE, awarding organizations, AOC, ETF, whoever it might be. So we have that one unified place where all of this information is hosted, that people know where to hopefully find and either signpost to the correct information, whatever it may be. And of course, a solution that is coordinated and sustainable. So obviously at the moment, there are a relatively small number of participating T-level providers, but as the program grows, there will be many more, and we won't be able necessarily to have these sort of one-to-one relationships ESFA has been able to have with wave 1 and wave 2 providers. So we need to make sure that the solution, the support offer is a sustainable one. So that's really where the website came from. I think the next slide is not the one that I want to show, but I'm going to actually show here. Hopefully you can see that. I might need to zoom in because I have a very wide screen. Is that coming up okay?
Yeah, that's clear, David.
Thank you very much. So this is the support with delivering T-levels, and I'll just quickly rifle through this because I know that there needs to be 10 minutes for questions and things, so I'll quickly rifle through. But as you can see here, you have the ability to literally search for anything that's hosted in here. We have the events section in the news section where you can pick up any of the newsletters or indeed look at what the key dates and events are that are upcoming. We also then have the industry placement guidance and template. All that documentation is in here. And the other thing that I don't think has been mentioned, I'm also part of the team that does a lot of the brand work. So we're involved with the tlevels.gov.uk campaign website. And we have all of the sort of campaign materials, branding materials, logos, social media images, all of that stuff is hosted on here as well. So that can be shared with marketing teams to kind of be used to brand any documentation or to be used on social media channels or anything like that. And the last thing that I just wanted to briefly show you as well was the forum, which is, as I said, brand new. So it's a little bit quiet at the moment, but by all means, if you'd like to have a look around, answer any questions. If you think that there are any questions that you might be able to have a discussion about or have similar questions about, feel free to post them on there. And other T-level providers, your colleagues, hopefully will get on there and you can have a conversation and discussion and about those things. So really that's me. I'm going to hand back at the stage. I'm not quite sure how I take the I think
I can do that from this end, David.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The one thing I will just say is any questions around anything the ESFA have discussed just on the previous slides, the various presenters, there is an email address just on the screen now, which you can use for any follow-up questions. Just contact the industry placements team at that email address there. And then we're going to actually move on to a question session now, really. Last 10 minutes of the webinar. ESFA colleagues have got to leave at 1:30. So we've got 10 minutes. City and Guilds may be able to stay on slightly longer if we've still got any burning questions after that. But for the next 10 minutes now, we're just going to ask you to put any questions in the questions tab. There may be some in there already, which we'll start and pick up whilst people are thinking of any questions they've got. We're also going to drop into the chat our survey, which is a survey around today's presentation, content, and really, you know, anything else you might require for future events, how this is working for you as a centre, etc. So it should take you about 3 minutes to complete that. You might get a chance to do that while we're actually answering the questions. So we're going to drop that in the chat box now so you can start and complete the survey as well. Let's get it mopped up before we close. We can then get your feedback and hopefully then, you know, valuing that feedback, we'll take that on board and improve these sessions for the future. So start and drop your questions in the questions tab. I know colleagues have been monitoring those already, and we'll start and review those and come back to you with some responses. Thanks a lot, everybody. Okay, we'll start and pick questions up as they're coming in. Colleagues can jump in and pick any of these up as well as we are progressing through. So we've got a question, and these are all anonymous. We'll tend not to sort of say who's asking the question, so please feel free to put any questions in there you wish. What would be the advantage of taking this over going straight into an apprenticeship? So I think what they're getting at there is really, what's the advantage over T-level to apprenticeship? Well, probably none, I would say. If just the response to that, you know, if there's an opportunity for an apprenticeship and there's employment there, apprenticeship would be a valuable route and would still be probably the preferred route for most candidates if they can gain employment. T-level, though, is the new program which will hopefully get them closer to that employment than probably VRQs do at the moment, because of the work placement, the industry placement, is getting them engaged with employers, possibly more than one, can probably build that relationship up with potential employers. That's sort of how I see this hopefully working. I know we've just had comments around industry placement, but if we can get this relationship between T-level learners and potential employers really working, it's almost a chance for them to build that relationship with employers to, you know, see if that relationship's working for both parties before potentially taking apprentices on. So this could potentially be a very good fishing pool almost for apprentices. That would tend to be my response to that question, really.
Yes, it might just be worth adding to that the interesting thing is apprenticeships are sort of you know 80% in the workplace and 20% you know sort of study. T-levels are just the broadly speaking the inverse proportion of that. And for many students, they'll prefer working in a sort of a classroom environment, learning the skills, et cetera, in a classroom environment, but then having 20% of their time, you know, on a high quality, substantive industry placement before progressing possibly into an apprenticeship. It might be into higher education, or it might be into direct employment. So it is also about the needs of the student and providing a third route alongside apprenticeships and A-levels as well. Those three main routes. There will still be other qualifications, but those three main routes.
Can I just come into that one, Rob, as well? Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem, Ali. Thanks.
Yeah, I wasn't sure people. And as well, an apprenticeship really, you have had to make your choice from day one with an apprenticeship and follow that particular occupational specialism. Whereas because a T-level offers a core in the first year and looks at all the occupational specialisms, it allows that learner to make more of an informed choice before they basically sort of embark on what particular occupational specialism they want.
Thanks, Ali. We've also got another question which ESFA colleagues might be able to support with. What if the effects of COVID have meant that there are fewer employers to take on work experience? What will happen to the student potentially if that work experience doesn't follow through and maybe can't be carried out, I think is what the question is referring to.
Well, as I say, with COVID-19, we know it's a very challenging situation. So therefore, you know, we're supporting placements through the Capacity and Delivery Fund. You know, we have sort of made arrangements in respect to provider funding and so on that recognises that situation. With the first 3 T-levels that have come on stream in September, we're monitoring it very closely, but it is a relatively limited number of placements that will need to be achieved, because it's a relatively limited number of students undertaking those, if you will, the first real T-levels. And because the placement can be completed at any time, over the 2 years, there is actually still plenty of time in which to complete that placement, particularly if we begin to move to a normal or a new normal from you know, the spring summer next year. And just to add to that, although this isn't quite the same for education and childcare, we do want the young people to be putting their what they've learned into the classroom into practice in an industry placement. So it may be that that's better done in the second year. They're allowed across the 2 years, of course, but it may be better that they're done in the second year. So hopefully there will be time. There's a relatively limited number. We're looking at redirecting the resources of the National Apprenticeship Service, which I mentioned, in order to ensure that there are plenty of employer placements in those areas. We're going to be finalising that provider support for those 2020 providers. So we are really putting out all the stops in order to ensure that those T-levels can be completed, and we think, although we will continue to monitor it, that there is time to do so.
Thanks, Chris. And just linked to that as well, we've also had a sort of associated question, really. What if the college is in maybe a rural area with few local employers maybe to take on students? Is there anything taken into account for that, or is it just a general support material, or is there anything to that effect?
Well, clearly that will be an issue, and it will be a challenge in certain sort of rural areas. But those challenges are more widespread about people, and particularly young people, getting to work in any case. What we've done is we've increased bursaries for 16 to 19 students to help meet those travel costs. The National Apprenticeship Service itself are working in particular to get more small and medium enterprises on board, because they tend to predominate in rural areas. So we're helping with travel costs. We're looking in effect to remove the need to travel, and what we know good providers are doing is working very closely with local transport authorities, and there's some good sort of imaginative practice out there where you do get that good engagement between the provider and the local authorities and the local transport authorities, you know, whether that's putting on additional bus stops or perhaps helping to top and tail journeys and so on. So there is actually some good practice out there.
Thanks, Chris. Another question, which if the placement doesn't work for either student or employer, can they change to another employer?
Well, you can work with up to sort of 2 employers to complete a placement, but what we would urge is that there's very good student preparation to begin with, to getting them to make sure that they themselves are work ready, to use things like the work tasters to make sure that you've actually got a good match, to try and actually avoid that situation arising sort of in the first place. Clearly it may arise from time to time, notwithstanding that preparation, and the key thing here is through that engagement with the employer, and we do recognise touchdowns with that employer, is to rectify the situation if possible as early as possible, and you know, if changes need to be made, then to make them.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I'll try and give you a break from the questions there. Thanks for your support on those. What are the planned range of support resources, i.e. delivery materials, etc., to be in place for September 21 for students and delivery staff? I'll come back on that, and I'll let other colleagues drop in if they've got any other knowledge around this. From my understanding is that we're going to have limited smart screen resources with things like schemes of work, your lesson plans to enable you to structure and deliver that. We're also working in Hodder Education, who are delivering and developing books for the core around T-levels. So that's the sort of resources we're going to be delivering and running with. We're also going to be running these associated Teams sessions. So if anything comes out of the various occupational specialisms and there is a business demand for it, we can then develop, you know, the resources for relevant curriculum areas, and hope to support that in the future with some specific resources for the specialisms maybe. But at the moment, that's what we're starting off with, and that was part of the bid process. I'm not sure if colleagues are aware of anything else we might be doing.
On industry placements, we have produced a student guide, and I think you can access that through the industry placements delivery guidance.
Thanks, Chris. Any other comments?
Yeah, just add to that as well with regard to support resources. You've already got the suite of textbooks that are already out there from Hodder Education as well as the ebooks. You know, I think it's fair to say that just because it's getting converted into a T-level, that the industry by and large is remained the same, i.e., you know, just because it's now a T-level doesn't mean that hanging a door, installing skirting board, laying a brick has changed in any way. So obviously you have your current load of resources that are already out there, including the material that's already on our smart screen platform, and there is talk of making that more available via trades as opposed to qualifications as well.
Thanks, Jason. Another question we've got in there is, what if the candidate doesn't end up finding a placement within that 2 years? So how will that affect completion? I think if there could be any clarification on that.
Well, the onus clearly the industry placement does need to be completed as a key part of the T level. So what we're actually, so therefore the onus is on the providers there to work to make sure that they have a sufficient number of placements alongside the T levels that they're actually offering. If there are particular sort of difficulties in completing the placement, there are exceptional circumstances and special considerations if they can't complete within that sort of time frame, and we've detailed this in the delivery guidance what we do in those exceptional circumstances.
Thanks, Chris. And something which might be able to clarify. In my understanding that the actual certification around all this will be the actual T level itself. So the actual technical qualification won't be certificated. It's the full T level package which will be certificated. Is that correct?
Hi, Amelia here. That's correct. Yes. So if a student doesn't complete all the component parts of their T level that they need to pass, and they'll be awarded something called a statement of achievement, which will show them the component parts that they've been completed. And if they complete their full T level, so their English and maths, their industry placement, and their both elements of their TQ and any mandatory requirements, then they'll get a full T-level certificate. I can just see 2 questions that I can definitely answer. Do you want me to
Fire away,
quickly go?
Please feel free.
Yeah, so the confidence from universities acknowledging UCAS points. Yes, look out for the T-level action plan that is going to be published imminently. We've been working very hard with the HE sector to really understand what their requirements are for setting their admissions policies. Some universities are accepting them in line with UCAS tariff points, which are great. Other universities, such as Russell Groups, have to complete mappings of specifications so they can really understand whether a student will be kind of ready to do specific technical courses, and a lot of that is to do with kind of maths coverage in the T levels as well. So we're working with the HE sector to get them to have more information that they need to be able to make those specific admissions decisions. Are there any plans for T levels to be extended to 19 plus? T levels are currently available to 16 to 19, and we are trying to manage this rollout in phases, but we do want as many people as possible to benefit from T levels. So we're exploring how T levels can be extended to adults, including how they would be funded, and flexibility that can be introduced for adults as well as part of the post-16 qualifications review, second stage consultation, which is published and available on Gov if you would like to contribute. Sorry. Ran through that very fast, but I hope that answered both those questions.
Oh, thanks a lot, Amelia. Appreciate it. I know you've got to leave soon, so thanks for your support today, and Chris as well. I know you've got to leave soon as well.
Oh, sorry. There's a follow-up question. That if it's a case that a higher emphasis on maths is required as per your comment, are there any plans to add this to the qual? Maths already forms part of the technical qualifications, TQ, through the general maths competencies, which were developed with the Royal Society Advisory Committee on Mathematics Education, and as part of the tender process, awarding organisations needed to confirm that they had the coverage that the employer panel had provided for the general maths competencies within the T-level outline content. So it's across not just maths, but also English and digital skills competency framework. And I think you can find a bit more about that online, but you should be able to see that running through the qualification anyway. I hope that answers that too.
Great stuff. Thanks, Amelia. We've
Great.
got another question.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Currently, our level 3 provision in electrical has meant a lot of students then go into a portfolio type apprenticeship. Can you see T levels will follow this route? Yeah, Salim said at the outset, we are doing a hell of a lot of work internally, and I know there is various meetings going off with regards to progression, and you know, we're currently working to find out what that looks like ourselves, so we can keep our potential candidates, centres, etc. informed. So it's really watch this space with regards to progression, and hopefully we'll be finding a little more detail on that very soon. It's going to be slightly different for various industry areas and how various industry areas want to accept T-levels as well. You know, we've got various discussions to have with trade organisations, with various industry bodies, so we can really make T-levels work and be the accepted route into industry, which everybody is driving for. So it's watch this space a little bit with regards to the progression element of the qualifications. So will we involve colleges more in this process? Yeah, if that's regarding to the progression, what we'll be doing is rolling that out, and all those discussions will be part of some of these more focused specialisms meetings we will be running over the future sort of months. So just make sure you get your contact details on that form, so we make sure you're invited to those events, and you can then contribute. You can tell us what you need with regards to support. You can tell us what you want out of these sessions we're going to be running towards September 21 delivery, and then we can make sure you get the support you need, really. We are slightly over time. Any last questions? Just feel free to type them in the questions tab. There is also, as I mentioned earlier, the survey link in the chat. If you haven't already, I'd appreciate you take these last couple of minutes before we close just to, you know, complete our survey, give us a little bit of feedback about today, and then we can hopefully improve for the future. Let's have a look, see if we've got any more questions.
Rob, could I just cover one last thing, please?
Of course you can, mate.
Just one thing that it's been coming through as we do more work with regard to development and the validation process of the assessments. Our quad team have asked me to reach out to see if there's any colleges, any centres that would be happy to support us with that along the way. So looking at sort of mock assessments, getting photographs, videos, that type of thing, so we can, again, going back to the what support is going to be available, this is going to be some additional stuff we're working on currently. So if we have any centres on the webinar today that would like to get in touch and, you know, offer your services, we can give you centre recognition, etc. Please let us know once you get this presentation. All of our details are at the front, so please feel free to ping me an email. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and our details are on the slides as well. If there's anything anything you want to flag it with regards to that, fire it over to us. I've got a question I don't know the answer to, but I'm going to throw it out there to see if any colleagues on the call do. If only certain elements completed on a T-level and the candidate gets there.
Do you want me to pick this up, Rob?
Yeah, I'll read the question, then I'll let you pick this one up. Great. So if certain elements of the T-level are completed, can the student continue and progress and finalise the rest of it, let's say, in the following year? Ali, over to you.
Okay, I'm assuming that you mean that they haven't completed what they should have done in the first year, so they'll have to follow.
Into that, yeah.
That is okay. But what will happen is it's entirely up to each centre how you deliver the T-level. The recommendation was that, you know, you may decide to deliver the core in the second year and overlap with the specialism. So it's really down to how your curriculum plan to what that student achieves in that year, because the programme is a full 2 years. So nothing actually is awarded until that programme is completed at the end of 2 years. But if a student doesn't complete the full T-level after 2 years, they will get a statement of achievement which highlights the areas and accredits them for the things that they have achieved. So once they've used that 2 years of, or 2-3 years of their programme up, I don't know whether that actually is, have I read the question right at all, Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what they also might be getting at, and it might be something that I know I don't know the answer to, is let's say they don't complete the technical qualification, but they get all the work placement and they get the other elements of the T-level finalised. Would they be able to register on a following year and mop up the other pieces and then complete it? So register
well,
again?
The funding is for 3 years. It's 16 to 19, isn't it? Because that allows for a transition year as well. So the funding actually is over for 3 years, isn't it? Although the programme is. So it depends what that student is signed up to.
Something we might have to take away that, you know, can they come in, let's say they fail one of the elements of the assessment on that first attempt or in that first year, can they come back and mop that up within the funding and have another crack in the third year? That's something we might have to take away.
Okay.
We've also, got a question around, do you know the structure of the EQA visits? That's external quality assurance visits. So you'll get a T-level quality assurer for your approval. That's all part of the approval process. So as I said, get that pre-approval form filled in, the link from the slide, get that filled in, get the ball rolling on that, and then they will outline the total process with regards to quality assurance. But because it's marked by us in a lot of instances, it's a little bit like our technicals. Things are more moderated than they are quality assured. So you won't necessarily get an EQA visit coming in to view your evidence within the centre, let's say. It will be maybe a moderation visit around how you mark in your relevant synoptic assignments, etc., and things like that. So yeah, what I would suggest there is get your approval forms completed and get that technical qualification, T-level quality assurer assigned to you as a centre, and then you'll be able to ask all those questions around relevant quality assurance. Another question, will we require moderators? We've recently asked for them for 8202. Yes, obviously when T-levels kick off, we will need a team of moderators. The person asking the question there, yes, we have recently asked for moderators in electrical and plumbing. Again, applying for that now, I would say puts you in good stead, because we'll build a team of moderators for electrical. Now, obviously, we've got specialisms in electrical and plumbing and things like that for T-levels, but we will need moderators across all specialisms. So yes, basically that is the answer. We will need a team of moderators, although we could potentially use some of the moderators. Obviously, we've also already got on board for our technical qualifications. We've got, if a learner completes year one and the T-level makes a good impression on the industry placement and the employer wants to convert the learner to an apprenticeship, is this success? Unfortunately, I think that's something which is a disadvantage to all educational organisations at the moment. We do some good work as centres out there. You get some high-flying learners who are working really well. They get attracted by a local employer who takes them on as an apprentice, and then all of a sudden your statistics in colleges don't look great because you've actually got them into employment. I know the driver from Ofsted would certainly say that was a success, but with regards to your success rates in your college figures, probably would not, and T-levels I wouldn't imagine would not differ much from that. This would be seen as a positive, obviously, for destination. So as I said, your Ofsted visits would look at this as great, but regards to success rates for your actual technical qualifications, they could look poor.
Can I just come in there, Rob? I know that.
Ali.
Yeah, sorry. I just know that there's a lot of work going on in the background here about altering this to make sure that the accountability measures, destination measures, and achievement measures are all aligned, and it shouldn't be seen as a negative. What we don't know is how that affects your funding. Obviously, there will be a sort of funding issue, which isn't really us, but it's actually going to be the same as any other destination to be seen as a success. Now, I know there's huge amounts of work going on with the DFE in that realm.
Thanks a lot, Ali. So we've gone sort of 15 minutes over time, which we don't mind. Obviously, this is all good. We're answering some very, very good questions, to be fair. Any more, though, before we close? We'll leave it another minute or so, and then I think we'll close for today. Obviously, we'll be with you again on the 9th. Hope you can join us then. Hope today's been useful, and tell us what's been good and maybe could have been improved on the survey, please, if you don't mind, before we close everything down. I can't see any more questions coming through. So I'm going to say basically thank you very much to everybody. I'm going to leave the webinar open for a minute or two, though, just in case any last people want to complete the survey. Not as I've mentioned it before, I know, but just give you a couple of minutes. If you haven't already, I'll leave the webinar open and the survey links live in the chat bar. Thanks a lot, everybody. That's goodbye from me, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend as well.